28 years later, casting risks wasting a 17-year-old franchise cliffhanger. In 2007, 28 weeks later ended with a chilling cliffhanger that still haunts zombie movie fans to this day. As the camera lingered over a desolate Paris, freshly infected and spiraling into chaos, the implication was clear: the rage virus had escaped the UK. That single moment promised a terrifying global outbreak and laid the groundwork for a third film 28 months later. But for 17 long years, that story went untold. Now, with 28 years later officially in development, audiences should be thrilled. Yet there's a growing concern that the franchise's long-awaited return could squander its most compelling narrative thread. And the latest casting announcements, though exciting, suggest the series may be abandoning the very plotline that fans have clung to for nearly 2 decades. A cliffhanger left to rot. The ending of 28 weeks later was subtle but devastating. The final scene showed the rage-infected sprinting through the Paris metro tunnels, signaling that the containment had failed and the virus was now loose on mainland Europe. It was a bold narrative decision, opening the door to a full-blown pandemic-level catastrophe. The obvious next chapter was to explore how the virus spread, how governments collapsed, and whether humanity could ever bounce back. Instead, the franchise went dark. For years, director Danny Boyle and writer Alex Garland hinted at possible sequels, but creative differences, rights issues, and shifting Hollywood priorities kept the project in limbo. Fans kept the memory alive, analyzing the Paris scene and speculating about what a European outbreak would look like. Now, with 28 years later on the way as the first installment of a new trilogy, the hope was that the cliffhanger would finally be addressed. But there's a catch. Star power, but at what cost? The announced cast for 28 years later includes heavy hitters like Jodie Comer, Aaron Taylor-Johnson, and Ralph Fiennes. These are actors with serious dramatic chops and blockbuster experience. Clearly, Sony and Boyle are aiming big. From a production standpoint, this is great news. But narratively, it raises eyebrows. Why? Because the actors' ages and profiles suggest a jump forward that may bypass the events directly following 28 weeks later. Rather than picking up in Paris or tracking the immediate fallout across Europe, 28 years later seems poised to skip over the intervening decades entirely, leaping to a world that's already been devastated or reshaped by the virus. That's an intriguing premise in its own right, but it also risks burying one of the franchise's most tantalizing unresolved questions: what happened in the months and years after the virus spread beyond Britain? A missed opportunity for world building. One of the great strengths of the 28 days/weeks later universe was its grounded realism. These weren't bombastic, superpowered zombies, they were humans driven mad by rage. The horror came not just from the infected, but from the governments, militaries, and civilians trying and often failing to respond. Watching France, Germany, or the US deal with the outbreak could have provided a wealth of storytelling material and emotional resonance. A third installment focusing on that initial global spread would have bridged the gap between weeks and years, enriching the mythology and giving closure to longtime fans. Even just a flashback-heavy narrative or a dual timeline could have honored that cliffhanger while still pushing the story forward. Still time to deliver. To be fair, we haven't seen the full plot yet. It's entirely possible that 28 years later will include some nods to Paris or even answer lingering questions from the second film. Danny Boyle and Alex Garland are both masters of tension and atmosphere, and their return is a promising sign that the film will at least retain the franchise's signature tone. But there's a tightrope to walk. If 28 years